Hi everyone, I'm Jan Wegener and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. As you can see, I'm not in my normal studio today and I'm all rugged up, so I must be somewhere cold, and I'm in Melbourne to be precise. After traveling tropical North Queensland for several months and getting some amazing photos and videos, we drove down to Melbourne for a family wedding, and I must say it's great to be back here, but it's quite a shock to my system as well to wake up to 5 or 6 degrees every morning rather than having a nice and comfortable 20 or 30 degrees every day. But of course, I can't travel anywhere without checking out the local bird life as well, and so I've been able to film and photograph some beautiful wedge-tailed eagles, peregrine falcons, and pink robins, amongst many others. What makes these outings even more interesting is that I have been receiving some new and exciting gear that I'm currently trying out in the field. I can't talk about all of it yet, but there'll definitely be some very interesting reviews coming up very soon on this channel. One camera I've been particularly interested in trying out in the field is the Canon R1. It came with a lot of hype and then a little bit of disappointment when we found out that it's only 24 megapixels, so I'm really curious to see how it performs in the field. And now, after I've been using it for a little while already, I must say so far I feel very surprised and confused. But more on that later in my full review that I will post by the end of next week. What has also been great to see is the fantastic feedback that I've been receiving for my new website and my brand new next generation Photoshop and Lightroom Masterclasses. I've worked on these for several months and redesigned everything from the ground up, making sure there's a much better structure and learning experience for everyone that wants to take these classes. But getting that feedback and seeing that it actually helps people to transform their own images and actually even enjoy image editing is so fantastic for me to see, because that was the aim, to help you get better results and to make editing actually a fun and rewarding experience for you. And for all of you that don't have my masterclasses yet, I've linked them for you down there in the description. I know they will help you a lot and teach you step by step everything you need to know either in Photoshop or in Lightroom can get amazing results from your own images. So make sure to check them out. Sorry guys, I was just rudely interrupted by Canon calling me, telling me that they finally have my R5 Mark II spare batteries in stock, which is fantastic news. I have two R5 Mark IIs, but only 2 batteries, which has been really painful to use in the field. So the news that I can finally get some more batteries is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to not having to use the old batteries or constantly charge the batteries that I currently have. When it comes to image editing and editing software, there's also been a few interesting new releases this week, in particular Topaz Gigapixel 8. And this is a software that I've used over the last few years to upsize my images and typically gotten some pretty good results. Sometimes there's some artifacting or weird crisscrossing going on, but overall it is my go-to software when I want to upsize my images. And now they've released version 8, which apparently is even better. I haven't tried it out yet, but over the next little while, especially with those 24 megapixel R1 files, I will try and upsize one to see what the results will be like. And if you want to try out that software, for instance DXO Pure RAW 4 or Photolab 8, there's also a special discount code linked for you down there in the description that will expire soon. So if you want any DXO products, you can definitely check it out. And there's also a few free trials for you linked in the description of DXO software and also the Topaz software. DXO Pure RAW in particular has done a pretty good job for me in removing that little bit more grain that I get in my current R5 Mark II files. And I've also made a full video about how I edit these files and what the best ways are to remove the noise from the R5 Mark II files and some other files. So if you haven't watched that video yet, make sure to check it out after watching this one. Over the last few months and years, I've been basically using every wildlife lens and every wildlife camera there is from the major brands, and while all of them have some amazing features, I also realized that there simply isn't the perfect camera or lens available. They all have some pros and then some cons, and finding the best camera and lens for you means finding the one that hits the most checkboxes for you. What I really enjoy seeing though is that a lot of the companies have put R&D money into developing some more exciting lenses. Nikon kind of led the way in the wildlife sector with their 600 and 400mm TC lenses, the 600 and 800mm PF lenses, and some interesting smaller lenses and zooms as well that all perform super nice in the field. What I personally enjoy as well though is seeing that Canon seems to be pushing ahead in that space as well. So far, we haven't seen too many exciting lenses, but we already have that nice 100 to 300mm f2.8 lens that you can also see behind me here at the moment. That's one of the lenses I'm currently field testing as well. And there have been a lot of very interesting patents from Canon. In the last episode, we already talked about the lens that I would love to see to come to reality, and that's an f2.8 400 to f4 600mm zoom lens. I think a lens like this would definitely be a game changer and would actually get a lot of people to switch to Canon. But now this week, we've also seen some more interesting patterns come up. The first one is for an RF 400mm DO lens with a built-in teleconverter. And the most interesting fact about this lens is that the teleconverter actually doesn't sit at the end of the lens, but rather further forward on the lens, which should mean it has slightly better image quality than a teleconverter that sits further back on the lens. And while 400mm is not necessarily a focal length that interests me the most, I think this would still be quite an interesting lens because it should be pretty small and light if it actually becomes reality. What excited me more though was scrolling down that page and then reading that Canon has also published a patent for a 600mm RF f4 prime lens with a built-in 1.4 teleconverter, similar to what Nikon has been doing with their 600mm prime lens. And while I personally would probably still prefer a zoom design, a 600mm f4 prime lens with a built-in teleconverter would definitely be something I'd be buying if it came out. So while we don't know yet what will actually come out, it's exciting to see Canon working on some very interesting lenses. My personal choice whenever I can would be a super high quality and fast zoom lens, but also some prime lenses with built-in teleconverters would be fantastic. Although I must say, the ultimate lens may very well be a smaller, lighter lens, similar to what Nikon has done with their 600 and 800mm PF lenses. Having an RF 600mm, maybe 5.6 DO lens would also be fantastic, because even though I love the big fast lenses, having a nice and light small lens is something that I value more and more in the field. And if all these rumors weren't enough already, Canon rumors are stating that Canon has also been planning to release another wide telephoto lens in the next little while. They can't say or don't want to say what they think it is at this stage, and I haven't heard anything from my sources, but it would definitely be interesting to see some more exciting lenses that can hopefully be used for wildlife as well. There have also been a lot of talk floating around about an f4 200 to 500mm lens, but it has gotten quite quiet around this lens, and Canon rumors in the past have stated multiple times that they know that lens will definitely be coming, but now they're reporting that it seems to have been pushed back into 2025. And again, my sources have been for a long time saying they've never really heard about this lens. And in the past, normally when something is happening, as you know, my sources are pretty good and I often break news about new lenses and cameras. So for now, it's been pretty quiet, and if and when that lens will actually come, we have to wait and see. But I definitely enjoy seeing, especially Canon, pushing the boundaries by creating fast and hopefully not too big and heavy zoom lenses. Because the few times I've been using the 100 to 300mm lens in the field, I must say the performance has been amazing. The image stabilization is amazing. The autofocus is super fast and snappy. It's just a little bit on the heavier side, but overall the performance, especially without the teleconverters, is exceptional. So having more zoom lenses that are still fast with a good image quality might actually be my preferred way forward, rather than having these big heavy prime lenses. Don't get me wrong, I love a big prime lens like that 600mm lens behind me there, but if you can also have a zoom lens that has similar quality and a similar size, you are actually even more flexible in the field, especially also when it comes to filming video. What would be your personal choice? A 400mm DO lens, a 200 or 300 to 600mm lens, or maybe a 600mm lens with a built-in 1.4 extender, or maybe even a 600mm DO lens? Let me know in the comments. Ever since the Canon R1 has been announced, there have been a lot of question marks about the Canon R3 series and whether it would be continued or the R3 would be a one and done camera. And now Canon rumors has been reporting that Canon is still planning to keep pushing on with that R3 series, which I actually like. I didn't like the R3 for photos as much because of the 24 megapixel, and I use it for filming myself most of the time like I do now with that camera. But where the R3 really stands out is in the body shape, size and weight. R3 just perfectly lies in your hand. So if Canon would find a way to keep using that body, it's definitely a camera I would be very interested in, especially if it has more than 24 megapixels. And so if you ask me, if we're just speculating here, I see two ways forward with the R3 and its great body. Either it will get a global shutter in a few years from now if Canon will have that technology and it becomes a super fast 120 frames a second or more camera, or Canon will finally cave into people like me and a lot of nature photographers and give us the R5 Mark II sensor, for instance, in that R3 body. And that is what we all have been truly asking for and wanting. A great high megapixel professional body that can withstand heat and the cold with a great autofocusing system and around that 45 megapixel mark. So if Canon could do that in an R3 Mark II, I think many of us would be very happy, and I know personally I would definitely buy one or two of them. Now we've talked so much about lenses, but there's actually some more lenses coming out, and Canon has already teased that they will be announcing 3 new lenses at the 30th of October. And it seems like the lenses will be a 24 f1.4 lens, a 50mm f1.4 lens, and a new 70 to 200mm f2.8 lens. And the thing that a lot of you guys will like about that 70 to 200mm lens is that it will be an internal zoom design, and you will be able to use the teleconverters on that lens as well again. So much similar to the older style EF lenses where you could use the teleconverters and they were also an internal design. And I know that will make many people very happy. The lenses will be a little bit bigger, obviously, because of the internal design, but at the same time, I know that a lot of people didn't like that external zoom design and rather have a larger lens with an internal design. Are you one of them? Sony Alpha Rumors is reporting that they are certain that Sony will have a big announcement before the end of November. Now, we don't know what it is until it's actually announced, but from reading through the other rumors, it seems like it may be a follow-up to their current Sony Alpha 1, their main flagship camera. Reading through the associated specs that Sony Alpha Rumors posted, it definitely sounds like an interesting camera. What stands out at first is that they claim that the camera would have the same sensor with upgraded technology. So what this camera will actually be like, we'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely one that I would love to try out in the field, because ever since I used the Sony A9 Mark III in the field and was able to capture some breathtaking birds and flight shots, I've definitely been hooked on the technology and their great autofocusing system. What's actually the most amazing to see about Sony is that the current Alpha 1 has still basically not been surpassed in sensor technology. Even though the camera is a few years old now, it still has the fastest stack sensor that also has 50 megapixels and can shoot at 30 frames per second with basically no rolling shutter and still a very decent dynamic range at high ISOs. Canon, for instance, had a lot of time to produce some new stacked sensors like in the R5 Mark II, but they can't actually outperform the sensor that we find in the older Sony Alpha 1. So that camera in particular was definitely a giant leap in technology. So it will actually be very interesting to see when and if Sony's updated version of that camera comes out and how that will perform in the field. When it comes to Nikon, there hasn't been too much happening, but I think next year we may be seeing some interesting cameras and maybe even a Z9 too. What are some of the specs that you would love to see in that camera? I know for sure going forward, I would definitely want to see proper working RAW capture in any camera that I use or own. Speaking about Nikon though, I will receive some Nikon cameras and lenses, including the 800mm PF lens, to make some videos and try out the gear in the field. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this week's early bird photo news. If you enjoyed it, please give me that thumbs up. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. Check out my channel membership and especially my 2 new masterclasses, and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in another video very soon. Bye.